Hey guys, how are you? I hope everyone is having a good weekend and I hope everyone is doing well. Today I'm going to be telling the story of Daniel Valerio. It's a very unfortunate story. The amount of abuse that this little boy endured on his literally 2 years of life on this earth. I can't begin to describe the pain that this child went through. But like always, I just want to give a disclaimer for those who are watching this video and are triggered by graphic content. So, warning, viewer discretion is advised. This is a story of Daniel Valerio. Daniel Valerio was born on April 21st, 1988, and his parents were Michael Valerio and Cheryl Butcher in Australia. Daniel would be Cheryl's fourth child. Daniel also had an older brother named Benjamin. Cheryl's two other children were from a previous relationship. On October 1989, Michael and Cheryl separated, and Daniel and Benjamin stayed with their mother. On February 1990, Cheryl met Paul Leslie Aiden through Melbourne Introduction Agency. They would eventually move in together shortly after. Right away, people began to notice that something was not right with the children in the household. Neighbors as well as teachers noticed that the children were changing. Someone called anonymously to the community service, which is Victoria's after-hours child protection service. The caller stated that the children in the home seemed unhappy all the time and that they had bruises. One of Daniel's teachers described his as looking ghostly pale and having bruises on his face, including under his eye. In June of 1990, Dr. Young saw Daniel and noticed that he had indeed had bruising on his forehead and scalp, and the doctor ordered some blood tests to be done, but Cheryl never picked up the tests or bothered to see what the outcome was. It didn't take long for Daniel to be seen by another GP who noticed bruising on his eye. Cheryl blamed that it was Daniel being clumsy and also stated that his brother Benjamin was very rough with him. An examination was done and the doctor wasn't able to find any signs of Daniel being clumsy. Daniel was sent to Frankston Hospital for testing and spent 5 days in the hospital with Dr. Edwards Lawther, a pediatrician, tending him. There were no problems with clumsiness in the hospital. In fact, Daniel was doing quite well. Daniel ate all his meals and was more than happy when staff members or other visitors would pay attention to him. He loved to be held. Dr. Lawther noticed at once that Daniel's behavior was not normal for a child in the hospital, noting that children who go to the hospital are usually scared, but not Daniel. He stated, "Children who are neglected are often happy because they're getting more attention than they do at home." Daniel left the hospital doing fine. It only took about another week for a call to be made revealing that Daniel was once again in trouble. Daniel was thin, sickly, and had more bruises as well as 2 broken collarbones. In August, a man came into the home to work on the electricity. Alan Brennan noticed that the children in the home lay in bed and didn't move a muscle. Daniel in particular shocked him because he had been bashed on the head and had bruises on his arms and his legs. One eye was closed and the other one was almost closed. He could barely see. He was swelling on his cheeks and on his jawbone. The police were called and CPS paid a visit to the home, finding Daniel was not there. Cheryl later took him to see Dr. Young, who was shocked at Daniel's condition, saying that Daniel had been bashed. Police were again called at about 5:15 p.m. that same day, and at that time, Daniel and Benjamin both told them that they were often hit by Paul with a stick. The police took the stick away, but left the children there. Though they did arrange for them to be seen by Dr. Robert McAllister, who said that the injuries were suspicious and consistent with child abuse. He could not say for sure if the bruises were non-accidental. Daniel was sent home again. During this time frame, Paul talked to the people that he worked with and bragged about what he had done to Daniel. Paul admitted that he didn't like Cheryl's children and especially didn't like Daniel. Paul told of how he would throw the child against the wall so he could watch him slide down, punch him hard enough to make his own knuckles hurt, and how if Daniel peed in the tub, he would hit his penis with a wooden spoon. Paul bragged to his coworkers about how he had one time forced Daniel's face into a pile of feces, and how one time he came home to find Cheryl had made a list of things that the children had done wrong that day, and he went to Daniel's room, picked him up by his hair and clothing, and dropped him face first onto the floor. One of Paul's co-workers said Paul had bragged once to him about his treatment of Daniel. "I got my son to do a star last night," Paul said. That coworker asked what he meant. Paul explained that he made Daniel stand with his arms and legs apart like he would do a star jump. And Paul added that he would then kick Daniel in between his legs and he would fly across the room. Paul would also make the children stand up for 15 minutes at a time with their hands in the air as punishment. Daniel once had to do this as Paul stood behind him, yelling each time if Daniel started to put his arms down. 3 days before he died, Daniel saw Dr. Young and suspected gastroenteritis on the morning of September 8, 1990. Daniel would stay in his room while the family had a garage sale. At lunch, Daniel started to cry, so Paul, who was sick of listening to him cry, picked him up out of his bed, slapped him across the face. Paul would later say, "His crying got too much for me. I lost it. I sort of freaked." After slapping him, Paul laid Daniel back on his bed and started punching him in the stomach. Paul would later admit that he punched him. He doesn't know how many times, but it was more than once. Later that day, Daniel died with over 104 bruises on his little body, 2 broken collarbones, and crushed internal organs, which doctors say resemble to those who have been in a car accident. You guys will honestly won't believe what happened next. But the next day after Daniel's death, Daniel's mother accepted a marriage proposal from Paul, claiming that she didn't believe that he hurt Daniel. Cheryl even saw the paperwork where Paul admitted to killing Daniel, and she stayed married to him anyways. Paul bragged about how he had been charged with manslaughter and how he had been able to marry the mother's kid. Daniel's biological father, Michael Valerio, had not seen him for several months before his death. Sadly, Michael found out by the death of his son when he heard it on the radio. Michael had made arrangements for his son to be buried. Unfortunately, so did Cheryl, and she didn't notify Michael of any of the arrangements. Michael found out where his son was going to be buried, but it was only 30 minutes before the funeral was set to start. Michael didn't make it in on time. He arrived only to see Daniel's coffin being put into the ground. Paul was found guilty and sentenced to 22 years, but was released in 2011. Cheryl ultimately divorced Paul, and he went on to remarry and start a new life, something he did not Daniel when he beat him to death. So yeah, guys, that is the unfortunate story of Daniel Valerio. The amount of abuse that this poor child suffered at the hands of this piece of shit that is walking free literally boils my blood. The fact that this murderer, child murderer, is out there living his life. He only served 19 years for taking this boy's life is astounding to me. And the fact that everyone in Australia failed him, and the few people that actually tried to do something, nobody gave a shit. The cops didn't give a shit. CPS didn't give a shit. And I'm sorry for my mouth. I'm sorry. But you know what? As a mom, yeah, it does something to me. The fact that CPS fails so many children is honestly disgusting. No matter where we go, I don't understand. You're there to help these beings, these children that don't have a freaking voice. And when they try to say something, they get dismissed like they don't mean anything. So guys, this has to change. I know that a law was later pushed after his death, but how many children do we have to lose? How many at the hands of pieces of shit like this for something to change? Guys, I try to stay as neutral and as respectful as I can when I do these videos. But it just gets to a point, like, it's how many stories, how many children, how many lives is it going to take for our system to change? You know, I just now recently did the Charlotte, Kassenhoff. It's like, how many times with proof and everything? And it's just like, it doesn't matter in the end. It doesn't matter. So I strongly believe that our system is flawed. Something has to come out of it. Something has to change. If I worked at CPS, I would move mountains to save a child, to do everything that I could for these children, but I can't. So if you guys work in CPS, whoever watches my videos, I hope that people who work in CPS or police officers or teachers or anybody who can make a difference, make the damn difference. Even if you could be wrong, it's better to be wrong than to not say nothing at all and then have this happen. Like, why? Guys, but I think I rambled enough. I think I went on my rant enough, and this video was about Daniel's story. And may he rest in peace. And I'm glad that he's not hurting anymore. But on to my next story, or if you guys have any suggestions for me, I love listening to my followers or anything that you guys have to say, even if it's just constructive criticism or criticism. You know what? I'll take it. But one thing I won't do is argue with you guys. But I appreciate any feedback that I get from you guys. Remember that I love you, so always take care. And remember, you can be the difference. You can be the difference to making a change. It just takes one person, just one. But I love you guys and hope to catch you in my next one. Bye, guys.